Irish Illustrated Insider is sponsored by Visit Southbend.com. Is it time to check a Notre Dame home game off your bucket list? Has it been too long since you've soaked in the game day atmosphere in person? Whether it's for the first time ever or in a while, start planning your trip to South Bend to watch the Fighting Irish with ideas and inspiration at visitsouthbend.com.
It's Notre Dame BYU week. This is Irish Illustrated Insider, Wednesday, October 5th, 3 days before Notre Dame takes on BYU in Las Vegas. I'm joined by Tim O'Malley and Pete Sampson. I'm Tim Priester, and we will talk a bunch about BYU here with questions in second segment, and a little bit in first segment. But I did want to jump into the interview sessions that we had yesterday. We had Tommy Rees, offensive coordinator. We got defensive line coach Al Washington, as opposed to Al Golden, and the players on offense were Audric Estime and Jarrett Patterson. On defense, Riley Mills and Jack Kaiser. Tim, I know that you read the transcripts. Pete, you were there. Pete, just some of your impressions from our interviews yesterday.
I talked to Rees, Estime, and Patterson. I think Patterson sort of fits into like offensive linemen are the best interviews, that camp, because he's able to sort of speak in specifics and engages you in the interview. It's, the first time we talked to him since he kind of blew up at the end of the Marshall game. I think he handled that line of questioning great, because it doesn't need to be super awkward when you talk about something that happened that we all saw. So, it was interesting to hear him detail about his foot and how I think he said he has the most expensive foot in the Goog, because of all the tape and special plates and orthotics in there now. It was a question I asked Rees about, like, how much better does Patterson make Carell? How much better does Patterson make Alt? And, I think we all talk about, we think about that concept in terms of like a great receiver makes a quarterback better, or, Kyron Williams makes an offensive line better, but I don't think we think about specifically in terms of how a left guard makes a left tackle or a center better. But I think it's clear that's happening based on what's happened over the last couple of weeks with the offensive line and the run game and the offense in general.
What struck me reading the Rees transcript was the change in discussion with the offense, specifically a guy like Logan Diggs, where 3 weeks ago it was, it's hard to play three running backs. It's hard to get him in there. And Logan Diggs didn't play. And then Logan Diggs has that game, and it's like, there's going to be games where he's the hot guy and he's out there the most. That's kind of what, it kind of tells you where Logan Diggs is now compared to where Logan Diggs was then. And it illustrates Notre Dame's improvement. Like, they now have another weapon in the skill positions, and it's all because that offensive line is coalesced. And I think the strangest thing for me, it'll always be this way, is that the offensive line took 2.5 games to get going under Harry Hiestand. But that goes to Pete's point. I think Jarrett Patterson not being healthy had something to do with that. I just think Jarrett Patterson was battling through shouldn't have been out there.
I tweeted this out after, I don't know, it was after the Ohio State game, the Marshall game. But like, if you look at when Hiestand came to Notre Dame the first time, it took them like 4 or 5 games to get going. Well, they was on an undefeated team. Like, yeah, they were playing better. They weren't playing Marshall. I get that.
I always figure. I always look back at that as, because they destroyed Navy, which they probably would have done with this line too. But
I skipped that. I'm just saying it took them against Power 5 teams.
Yeah,
3 or 4 games.
I always kind of give them the pass on that Purdue game because they had 4 days back from Dublin or whatever, basically, when they played that game. But you're right. Against Michigan State, Michigan, Purdue, it was not an offense that looked good.
No.
Yeah, I enjoyed talking to Jarrett Patterson for many of the reasons that you mentioned, Pete. I think, had we gotten him like the week after the Marshall game, it might have been a little bit more uncomfortable, but time had passed, and you broached the topic well, and then I followed up with it. I said to him, I was nearby when it happened. I saw that Hunter Biven, the former Notre Dame offensive lineman, is the one that stopped you from going into the locker room. I'm like, what if you had gotten to the locker room, what would you have done in there by yourself? I mean, would you be thinking, damn, maybe I shouldn't have done this? Or
I thought he would have just headed out the tunnel, walk back to his apartment in full uniform.
That would be great. Actually.
Anyway,
he said that.
He said Biven's still a pretty big dude, and he would have had a hard time getting by him.
You didn't use my line on him that Hunter Biven threw the best block of the day for the Irish that day.
A very small segment of people said, "Oh, no excuse." Well, there is an excuse. There is an excuse with Jarrett Patterson because he's a captain. He came back. He battled with the decision about coming back or not, and then he gets hurt, and then they have 2 losses and they can't win a national title. So, or can't participate in the playoffs. So, I may understand where he was coming from. I enjoyed Audric Estime. Pete, you thought that maybe there were some cliches in there, and there certainly were. But I got a kick out of the fact that, I asked him. I mean, it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years since he had a big game. I mean, think about that. If you're a big time athlete, you come out of high school, and it takes 2 years before you experience the kind of success that you did in high school. But interestingly enough, the fumble that he lost, he said was the first fumble he's lost in his career.
That was
it wasn't even forced. I mean, it was self-inflicted because he was reaching for the goal line. And, I think that's, I mean, on one hand, coaches, you shouldn't be reaching for the goal line, but there are also instances when you need to reach in order to get the touchdown. Now, he got the first down on the play, but he wasn't thinking about that. He's thinking about scoring. But anyway, pretty interesting that, and maybe not shocking that an Audric Estime has not ever lost a fumble before.
One thing that was interesting that he said it toward the end of it was like, I just sort of pitched up a softball about like, is this sort of how you thought your Notre Dame career would go? Thinking like, okay, it's year 2, you're playing a ton, you're basically a starter, like you're coming off a great game, like that, and that he would sort of view it as a positive, and it was like he kind of like, I don't want to say he was like standoffish about it, but he's sort of like, well, no, like this is not. I can't say this is how I thought it was going to go at all.
He thought back to last year what it was like, and he had 7 carries all year, and 6 of them came in the 11th game of the regular season.
Yeah, I think we just sort of maybe forget the fact that, like, if you're in it, taking a long-term view as a college kid is actually very hard to do.
I want to ask players that more often because sometimes it's, like think about a Xavier Watts. Now he's playing more and stuff, and eventually, I mean, probably he has a shot at starting next year, but when you go 2 and 3 years without being a star after being Watts was a dominant offensive and defensive player. And just I think I need to ask some players that a little bit more often because I think it's difficult for us to relate to the emotional turmoil that a stud player coming out of high school has to go through waiting for his opportunity.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of particular examples this year of freshmen not playing, but I thought of Audric Estime last year, like where was he going to play, right? I mean, he can't think that way. There's no way he's going to think that way, but Kyron Williams is on your team.
Who had his own freshman year where
once Logan Diggs,
right?
Kyron Williams had to sit out basically his freshman year. It's got to be tough though, because I mean, I think Audric Estime probably could have contributed last year had Logan Diggs not contributed, right? It was Logan Diggs won the role. Right. Contributed. That must be frustrating because I'm sure in practice, Audric Estime felt he was every bit as good as Logan Diggs, if not Kyron Williams. But that's a good question, a line of questions to ask Tim when they are seniors that are playing. As opposed to
when they can get a little
juniors
farther
that are
away
not,
from the red shirt.
Right. It's well in the past, and they can maybe feel a little bit more comfortable.
right.
Talking about it. Tobias Merriweather was brought up to Tommy Rees, and I kind of sensed that he didn't really want to go down that path again, because the reality is, I mean, and Pete, I thought on Monday I said, well, the players got to meet you halfway. And you said, no, the players got to meet you more than halfway. And you're absolutely right. I mean, and I don't even know, I probably shouldn't even have brought this up now because we're tired of talking about it. But look, freshmen will play if they're ready to play. Lorenzo Styles is ready to play, 4 games into the season? Maybe Tobias Merriweather is ready to play in game 5. I don't know, but the Notre Dame coaching staff understands the issue that they have a wide receiver. They don't have enough bodies out there. If they felt comfortable putting them on the field, they put them on the field.
So this morning, because hate myself, I went through the top 20 receivers in last year's cycle and then went through Pro Football Focus to see how many snaps they had all played. Of the top 20 receivers last cycle, Tobias Merriweather was 18th in his ranking. How many have played fewer snaps this season than Tobias Merriweather?
Wow. You're dying to tell us, man.
He's played 1. And it's because he hasn't played any because he's injured. He's a knee injury.
So Notre Dame does
every receiver who's been healthy, who was ranked in the top 20, has played more than Tobias Merriweather. Half of them have played 50 snaps. 8 of them have played at least 100 snaps. 4 of them have played 200 snaps, which is basically what Lindsey has played. Or I'm sorry, what Styles has played.
It'll be strange. It's strange. It remains strange to me because they are so hell-bent on rotating on the back end of the secondary for the purpose of building depth and building it for the course of the season. I'm not saying Tobias Merriweather has to take 25 snaps a game, but it just seems like there's a way of getting guys. If you really want to build depth for the course of the season, you've got 5 corners now at your expense. You have put in Jaden Mickey at times at your expense, right? As a team.
Yeah. Or even playing like, Rubio and,
right.
Getting to like beyond
the comfort level. It seems like they're beyond a comfort level places. They put in Alex Ahrensberger. I know he's older, but they put in Alex Ahrensberger against Marshall with the game on the line. Like, it seems like you could find a way for Tobias Merriweather to be in there.
Well, I mean, Tui Alamaku, who they like, he was in against Cal. I don't think he had real good reps, and we haven't seen him since. But yeah, I don't even know why I bring it up again. I mean,
well, I think it's important that I'm not saying he's better than the guys. I'm saying, or he's doing better than those players in front of him. I'm just saying you can augment them. You're augmenting other positions. You can augment you could help Braden Lindsey in November if Tobias Merriweather could play a little bit.
Yeah, there's
for Hellemaka, like, he played 4 snaps against Cal, and then he did get on the field. He had 3 snaps against North Carolina's kind of situational stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I'm veering off here a little bit, but we're talking about receiver. I mean, Braden Lindsey's got to beat somebody one-on-one. I mean, he's got to beat somebody one-on-one, and he's going to get pressed this week, and that'll make it very difficult. But man, it is hard to sustain. I think I said it Monday. If you had a bye week after 4 games and then another 4 games, you could probably get by like that. But I don't know. Well, hey, let's real quickly. BYU, Notre Dame, I believe it opened at 2.5. It bumped up to 3.5. The over under. I originally seen a line at 55. The over under. It's 51.5. Just what are your thoughts on that? Because I know a lot of times when the line goes from 2.5 to 3.5, they're begging you to take. BYU. In this case, they're begging you to take BYU, right?
Yeah. I find these interesting. That's why I actually really like to look at those preseason lines where Notre Dame was favored by 9.5. And a lot of Notre Dame fans were like, that's not enough. That's nowhere near enough against BYU. And now, like, the impossibility of it being 7.5 right now in this matchup. But the over-under dropping is not surprising to me. I don't buy into it, though. I think I think Notre Dame's offense is just better than it was a couple weeks ago. And I know it was North Carolina. I just think Notre Dame's offense is better than it was a couple weeks ago. Like, they were so inept at the first 2.5 games. They just don't resemble that to me. And I don't think the backslide is that bad. I don't think the backslide is first half. Well, it can't be first half, Cal. I don't think the backslide is like the ugly moments during the first 2 games.
I don't think the backslide comes this week.
Yeah, I could come against Clemson.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think the backslide
it's not
comes
coming
this
next
week because no, it's not coming next week against Stanford either. Although, again, you will face a very talented quarterback.
Yeah,
that'll be 3 weeks. 3 weeks in a row where they will have faced a very talented quarterback. Pete, you got any thoughts on the line or which direction this game is going as it gets closer?
I agree that it's a line that's begging you to take BYU, right? Like, they're trying to get you to do that. Maybe in the same way that, the North Carolina line was trying to get you to take Notre Dame, which you should have at that point. Yeah. That was a good call.
Yes. Lesson learned, right?
Yeah. I think Reese was asked about this yesterday about, how much of the offensive success was down to the offense, how much of it was down to Gene Chizik and linebackers who don't know how to cover. And Reese is never going to say like, well, North Carolina sucks. So, but there's it's both, right? Like both things can be true at the same time, that Notre Dame played good offense and took advantage of a terrible, terrible defense. BYU is a lot better coach than that. So I think the over under is too low. I would bet the over on that. But Notre Dame's not going to score 48 points.
Remember, I texted you guys 2 days after the North Carolina game, and I was looking at over underline of 55, and I told you guys take the over, and it has settled in at 51.5. I understand why it's lower, but I still think over the course of 60 minutes, it's going to go over. But we'll see. We have more to talk about with BYU in the second segment. And this segment of Irish Illustrated Insider has been brought to you by Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Located on Fremont Street in historic downtown Las Vegas, Circa is the home of the world's largest sports book, where you can watch up to 19 games at once. Want to be outside? No problem. There's no better place to take in all the college football and NFL action than Stadium Swim. 6 pools on 3 levels and a 40-foot tall high-def screen to watch all the action. Irish fans, when you come to town this week for the Notre Dame BYU game, Circa is the place for you. For reservations and more information, go to circalasvegas.com. Back in a moment, segment 2, Burning Up the Boards.
Burning Up the Boards is brought to you by Game Day Your Way. Notre Dame football fans, make your trip to South Bend easy this fall with the help of Game Day Your Way. Services include tailgates, transportation, tickets, and more, making Game Day your one-stop shop for Notre Dame football weekend. Learn more at GameDayYourWay.com and use promo code IrishPod22 to save 10% on your tailgate package. Segment 2, Burning Up the Boards. Our first question comes from, and honestly, I had not thought of this, comes from ND Bass 2001. Is the game being played on Raiders grass or UNLV's turf field?
Yeah, the Raiders play on grass, and UNLV plays on turf in Allegiant Stadium. And I didn't know the answer, so I asked Ellen Wazlewski of Notre Dame, and the answer is turf. They will play on the UNLV's turf field. Question from UND Clancy. What are some of your standout memories of past Notre Dame BYU games? My first game in Notre Dame Stadium was 2005, Notre Dame versus BYU. I was a kid at the time, and Quinn, Stovall, Samarjan, and Zibikowski were like superheroes to me.
That was a fun superhero-ish team if you were a kid, wasn't it?
It really was.
It's about the most fun team you can think of, really,
Yeah.
in recent Notre Dame memory. That first team. And no sequels are as good as the original. To prove it right there, no 6. That was a fun one. My memory of Notre Dame BYU, every time I hear it, is Hurricane Ivan, because I was living in Atlanta and I was supposed to fly down to see number 1 Miami and number 5 Florida State with my roommate, who's a Florida State grad. The game was postponed, so I jumped on a plane and flew out to Provo for the 2004 game where Notre Dame gained about 1.5 yards. And I apparently found out Provo was a dry county as I pulled into my hotel room and promptly took a hotel to Salt Lake City.
Samson, we were at that game, 2004.
We were. That was because they moved the game so they could have a game ahead of the Michigan game, because they didn't want Michigan to play a game before Notre Dame had played, and that worked out swimmingly. I remember the 2012 game fondly because that was back when the media got free tickets to games, and Sloan
that was fun.
Was 2.5.
Oh my God!
Went with Dinah, and I remember bringing them. Do you remember the old hot chocolate machine in the press box? I freaking loved that hot chocolate. And I brought them some. They were sitting in top row of the lower bowl. Stayed for the entire game. Sloan said she was able to give the Cougar a high five, and that they had a great day. So it was freezing.
Oh my God!
They stayed for the whole time, and
I thought you were going. I thought you were going. I thought you were going to say that they left because it was so brutally cold that day.
No, there were 2 Cougars. In fact, I believe they had a male Cougar and a female Cougar.
2004, the loss to BYU to open 2004. It was the beginning of the end for Tyrone Willingham. At that point, it set such a poor tone for the season. And I wrote 2012 down too because it was brutally cold. I know people talk about the Snow Bowl. It wasn't. It was colder for BYU 2012. I mean, I heard from a lot of fans, and Notre Dame pulled that game out 17-14. Notre Dame had a lot of games that they pulled out to get to the national championship that year. But those are the 2 that stick out to me as well.
I have one more. 1992. I'm a student at Notre Dame, and we have this on VHS it was a gigantic tailgater back by the radio tower. And I am talking people jumping on top of trucks and RVs. It was a huge thing. We have it all on VHS.
Like Indy.
Yeah, we have it all on VHS. And there's a little kid comes over wearing a BYU jersey. And his dad's like, can he get on camera? Like, oh, yeah, sure. We're being nice students, even though we're drinking. The kid comes on. He's like 9. He goes, we still have this on video. I want to put it on YouTube somehow. He goes, Notre Dame sucks. We go, what? And he goes, you heard me. Notre Dame sucks. We're like, wow. So that kid now is 30 years older? I'd like to find that kid and see if
I bet you would.
Notre Dame sucks.
I bet you would. Question from Not Jay to Fel 1. What are the best matchups for Notre Dame in this game against BYU?
Well, we've talked about up front, obviously, and I think it's hilarious because 14 days ago we would not say Notre Dame's offensive line against Brigham Young's defensive line, but nowadays we feel that way. I think that is easily the matchup that Notre Dame has to win and that Notre Dame can win. If you're going to individual matchups, do you have another one where you look at it and say, I think it all comes from the offensive line? Do you have one defensively where you say, I think Notre Dame can really take advantage of Brigham Young here?
No, but I think since you brought that up, I think a really interesting matchup is their wideouts against Notre Dame secondary, which has been, Pete, you've brought up, how good, good enough. I mean, they've been pretty darn good. And I think that's an interesting matchup. And I really think that when all is said and done, we're going to feel like Notre Dame's defensive line got the best of their offensive line. They like to run. Everybody runs jet sweeps now. I get that, but they do like to run wide. I think Notre Dame's going to have success against that. As the game gets closer, I think Notre Dame has an advantage on both sides of the football, which probably tells you the direction that we're leaning at this stage. I also want to mention, and I don't know if he's going to keep his job, but their kicker, Jake Oldroyd, has missed 5 of his. I know your insider said it, Tim, the BYU insider, but I was aware of that he's missed 5 of his last 6. And in their last game, they only attempted 1 field goal, and it was a new kicker by the name of Justin Smith. So
he might kick. Did you see that? They're keeping the identity of their kicker secret for this game.
Okay, well, then it's a good possibility, but he's a very inexperienced kicker going against an ultra veteran Notre Dame kicker. Not that they go head to head, but if it comes down to that, I think Notre Dame, at least on paper right now, has an advantage there.
Yeah, I mean, the secondary, I was going to say, like, Jaron Hall is a 70% passer. And when Notre Dame has run into, I think even Plummer from Cal hit at a very high percentage. Can they sort of build on, or Plummer hit at a high percentage going into the game?
Not in the
job,
game, right?
And then he did a nice job against Drake May in terms of keeping the percentage down, even if the yardage and the touchdowns were up. So, how you balance completion percentage and big plays from a secondary that I think has played well the last 2 weeks. I'm interested in that.
I think another interesting matchup is BYU's linebackers, who I really like. I really like Max Tooley, number 31. I mentioned him Monday, I believe. But Tim, your BYU insider said that BYU doesn't have somebody to defend Michael Mayer. I realize most teams don't.
Right.
But he doesn't think that they have a stopper for him.
And I think where that comes into play is you compromise something else because of it, because you have to account for it. It's not like you can just throw your hand up. We'll just give it a shot with what we have. No, you have to.
Yeah, sure.
You probably have to change things.
Right.
So that, I think that comes into play. It helps somebody else.
And they still, the smart play, if they can do it, is try to make Notre Dame's wideouts beat you. Everybody can go in with that philosophy. And
Sure.
That's where the running backs in the passing game come into play, et cetera, et cetera.
Next from Panthers 23-23. With BYU's iffy run D and shuffling defensive linemen in and out so much, do you anticipate a lot of no huddle to allow Notre Dame's offensive line to wear down their defensive line and prevent substitutions?
I think it's a good question. And I've talked about how many guys that they play on the D line, but I don't know. I can't say that I know for sure. Do they send them out? Because your guy said kind of like hockey shifts, right? So I'm not sure that they're making changes within a series. I think they bring in a whole unit or a good portion of the unit to start the series and stick with that group.
Which Notre Dame does too. Then they call it when they do rally. Yeah, that's a lot of that. I mean, they'll find a time to bring. Notre Dame does find a time to bring in a whole hockey unit in the middle of a drive, but I think they just probably time it out. But it is a really interesting question because BYU, man, they just, when you look at their snap total, it is
an incredible. I have never seen so many defensive linemen play.
Yeah, I mean, if they play linebackers too, they rotate everybody. It's really nuts.
Which, I mean, if they rotate a lot, I guess I'm not sure like why Notre Dame playing at pace would be an advantage.
To not allow the shuffle,
not allow the
shuffle.
The insertion in the game at that time.
And then then it's like you sort of force them to play their starters more, which in theory would be a good thing for BYU because like Notre Dame just doesn't play at pace. They're ranked 122nd in total offensive plays, so they're not made to play fast.
Yeah, but when maybe if they get that happens too.
If you get BYU in a situation where they have a bunch of reserves in, then maybe you play at pace for like a series, but just to go throughout the entire game.
Yeah, I think they can play at pace better than they have though, because a little bit with four game samples, with 4 game sample size, 3 games were spent punting. Right.
Yeah. Well, true. Mm-hmm. No, it's true. I mean, it's a legit question. I get it, but I don't. At the end of the day, I mean, BYU is going to play who they play, and Notre Dame's going to run the pace of their offense with whatever Tommy Rees feels most comfortable with at this stage. Question from CMU Pens fan: with the elevation of Benjamin Morrison to starter, who would you say is the last freshman cornerback at Notre Dame to look this promising this soon?
I guess looking promising and starting are different things, right? Because Clarence Lewis started as a freshman.
Yeah.
Before that, they didn't have a freshman in 17, 18, or 19 at corner. So you can't go there unless you count Houston Griffith playing nickel, but I don't think really we didn't think of him as impressive or as a starter, really. So Julian Love started and was really good in 16.
Yeah, I don't know if the question means like in September. He wasn't starting yet in September, was he?
No, but they all started by October. They all started by October.
Yeah.
All 3 rookies started that year.
Why was that?
Yeah, exactly. That's true. So Morrison's doing it on a good team. So the last guy to do it on a good team would be Kavari, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, he's doing it on a 2-2 team.
A good,
which is different than a 4-0 team.
A good secondary, though, that he didn't get in there because Clarence Lewis has stunk.
Yeah, I was looking back at snaps played for freshmen under Brian Kelly, and I think the second most was Devin Studstill, which like on a good team he would have played 0, but it was the 2016 team and they didn't have a choice. So there's not, Benjamin Morrison is a good player on a good team.
The second most was Studstill over Love and Kavari Russell. Oh, Kavari
he definitely played more than Love.
Yeah,
you know what? In these snap counts, I do not have 2012. So
right.
Let me amend that. I think it's from 2014 or 2015 on. So it's the last 8 years. It's like
Studstill played like right away from game 1, so that's where he accrued
not ideal.
Some reps at that point. Question from Irish Gambler: BYU ranks 93rd in rushing defense. Which running back is best suited to take advantage of the Cougars and have a big day?
I mean,
I think that's an interesting question.
I do too, but I lean towards Estime as the game progresses. I really like the way Chris Tyree ran against North Carolina and a little bit against Cal. And I think Tyree if he keeps running like that, he's going to have a 180-yard day sometime soon, because at some point he's going to go for 75 yards to go with his 5 and 6 yard gains, because he's the guy that there's one missed tackle and it's over, right?
No, true. I mean, yes, true. I think Diggs or him is, BYU has struggled with the perimeter running game. And so I think that's why I think it's an interesting question, because certainly they're going to feed Estime. Estime's had 35 carries for over 200 yards in the last 2 games, averaging 6 yards a carry in the last 2 games. With Diggs and Tyree, well, we know Diggs prefers kicking it outside anyway, so this may be a really good opportunity for him. But there are yards to be gained outside the hash marks in this game.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a great answer on this one. I mean, it's like 2 weeks ago when they played North Carolina, Diggs had an awesome day, but it had very little to do with running the ball. had to do with like the fact that you get in 2 back sets and they lose the second running back. So, hey, if all 3 of them are over 100 yards of total offense again, or all-purpose yards, I should say, like, great. That would be totally fine by Tommy Reese's.
Tyree's going to get one. That, how we do our random predictions.
The
this
long
is a
run.
game where Tyree's.
No, I think that's a good call, Tim. I think I think the possibility of that is definitely raised against this opponent.
Next from Annie Davis. Do you think Notre Dame will be prepared for all the, quote, extracurriculars that come with playing BYU? Who on the roster do you think will set the attitude and bring the fight to Vegas?
Have you guys seen that? Have you seen what some of the BYU defenders choose to do frequently after the whistle?
Yeah.
I have not.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
I believe it's a thing. That's
definitely a mindset and an approach. Yeah.
Like one of the things that I think is the most concerning about BYU is I think they play fearlessly. I think they will play fearlessly against Notre Dame. Maybe it has something to do with the maturity and the age of their players. It probably has a lot to do with Kalani Sitake and his coaching staff and how they go about doing things. But I think they will play fearlessly against Notre Dame. And again, they play so many Power 5 teams that a 2-2 Notre Dame team isn't going to scare them entering the game. I think they're just going to go for it.
Well, I guess offensively, Michael Mayer will bring the fight because he is.
Michael Mayer was the first guy that I wrote down.
He's going to bring the fight. Joe Alt's got some in him for a young guy, and Patterson does. I think Notre Dame's defense has had that approach for several years now.
Yeah, Jason Adamalola is at the forefront of that.
Yeah. I mean, they're maybe it peaked in 2020 from that 2018 to 2020. There are a lot of jerks on that 2020 defense. I say that in a very complimentary way. Like they
good
really
jerks.
Yeah, there were a lot of jerks out there. That's a good thing.
I mean, before Ohio State, I go back to what Jason Adamolo said about like the baddest MF. Like, what did that matter at all? Nothing. But Notre Dame is, for the first part of the question, Notre Dame's staying at the Red Rock Casino, which is way off the strip. It's across the street from a Costco if they want to go get free samples at some point. But like, there's not a lot going on over there. So I don't think that the whole, like, you're in Vegas, the distractions, yada, yada. Marcus Freeman said bed check is at 8:30. He's going to be doing it. It's, even Audric Estime got into the whole business trip thing yesterday when he was talking to us. So,
well, the Red Rocks positioning is telling because it is off the beaten path, and there's
right. I believe it is also a Lorenzo Fertitta property.
Oh, there you go.
Off the beaten path, and it's a Fertitta property. So, you've got a favorable rate and a favorable location for a head coach trying to get a team focused. It did remind me of, like, remember Brian Kelly was asked about, like, what do you learn as on the road as a head coach? And he had the team stay at a casino in Reno one time. And
yes. What's the best Kelly story ever?
Yeah. And then I had one of his former assistants, who might be one of his current assistants, say, like, especially when the head coach is out to the casino at 3 a.m, that really gives you a flat game plan the next day.
Whoa. Well,
I don't think Freeman's going to get into that.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, other guys, it's certainly Audric Estime is a tone setter on offense. I know a lot of people are down in this guy, and heck, he may be a little bit gun shy after getting 2 targeting penalties, but Bertrand's a guy that sets the tone. Will. Bertrand, a surprising, right? A surprising tone setter. I think that most people wouldn't necessarily, because you hear him in an interview, and he's so mild mannered in those settings, but he's different on a football field.
He gets in a fight every practice we watch. JD Bertrand. So I asked Isaiah Foskey, who's his best buddy and roommate, is there anybody more different in daily life and on the field than JD Bertrand? And Foskey lit up like, man, he couldn't think of anybody. And then he looked over and he goes, you know what? Marist is a bit of a something or other on the field too. So maybe those are the two guys that bring the fight in this situation too.
I think I'd throw in Brandon Joseph's name too, because I'm sure that he will any type of verbal interplay with BYU, he'll give that back. Jim Booney, CRS, is Bobauer healthy enough to play? And will Prince Colley take all of JD Bertrand's first half snaps?
The first part, we don't know. Couldn't hurt the bye week. The second part, I think just like last time, Jack Kaiser will take 90% of JD Bertrand's first half snaps at will, and Colley will get some snaps.
I agree with that. I'm not sure how many snaps Collie will get. But with Bauer, I think that's unfortunately for him like a season long something that he's going to have to manage.
And his snap count has been steadily going down, right, Tim?
And I actually wonder how long he's had that injury, because when we talked to him late, it was either week 1 or late August. I think it was late August by the wording. He said, I don't know if I'll start or be a reserve, but I hope I'm on all 4 special teams. I remember thinking to myself, boy, that was a really mature thing to say as a captain and leader. Oh, it's when he became a captain. And now I think to myself, he was hurt. That's why he said he doesn't know if I'm going to start or be a reserve.
He was definitely hurt when he blocked the punt against Marshall, and there wasn't a whole lot before that in the season. He played 7 snaps against North Carolina on defense.
Well, and he's still on punt block, and he's right.
I think that's what it is. He refuses to not play.
He's still on punt block, and he tries to do it with the one healthy arm. They have him coming from. Maybe he was always coming from the left side, but they have him coming from the left side so he can put his healthy right shoulder out. Do I have that right?
Yes, his right shoulder went out, I think. I think there's the best way to say it about Bo Bauer is there's no defensive scheme planned for Notre Dame in which you are missing JD Bertrand inside and Bo Bauer gets 7 snaps if he's healthy.
Right. Absolutely. Question from Brian Chesnick. Looking at the 23 Viper depth chart, is there any way Aiden Gobira gets a look?
I'm going to pull up the 23 depth chart real fast here. And you know what? It's not loading fast. So I will say, yes, there is a way he'll get a look because they are losing players.
Wow. That position is in flux after this season.
Yeah. This is where Keon Keeley's decommitment hurts you in many ways, but he was a guy that,
how about
I don't think we would have been having a Tobias Merriweather kind of conversation about Keon Keeley next year.
Yeah, probably not. How,
a guy that I think Junior Tuihalamaka, it will get a look at that position. I remember talking to somebody around the program in summer and him saying, like, I'm not so sure his best asset is flying off the edge. So I think maybe that's a creating depth within, maybe that's a rotation, maybe that's a permanent move. I don't know. But I think in terms of a Viper, he's a guy to keep an eye on moving forward.
We saw one snap in that practice of Tuihalamaka flying off the edge. That really famous play we always talk about from Pine to Lindsay with the great coverage by Morris or by Mickey. That was Tuihalamaka pressuring him.
And I'm not saying that Maris Leafow is going to be moved to Viper, but he's an edge. Yeah. He's a rusher that we will continue to see how he develops as a pass rusher.
They considered moving him to whatever they called it back then as a friend. Remember we talked to him?
Yeah.
It was like the behind the scenes. Iquanu and Leafow were going to get a look at rush end. They called it rush end, I think, then drop end, rush end, whatever. So there's a lot of linebackers there. They could do it.
And did you mention Josh Burnham? I mean, he's a guy obviously that's pegged.
Yeah, he would be
for there as well. He's got to get bigger. I think he's trending in that direction, but he's got to get bigger. And Botello is probably could end up at either end at this point moving forward. I don't know.
And poll Vegas week over under prop bets. We'll go answer them as they go. Michael Mayer receiving yards 67.5.
I'll take the over on that one.
Wow.
O'Malley's reaction there says he's already placed the bet.
Yes. Way over.
You found a way to play. You found a place where you can place that bet.
I'm getting all of my Chris Tyree money back on Michael Mayer right now.
So the lost Chris Tyree money.
That's such a load that never should have happened like that.
Why don't you quickly explain that for those that don't?
The Chris Tyree over under for receiving yards against Ohio State was 8.5. 8.5 in the first quarter. He got a pass for 6 yards. Everybody looked at me like, nope, need one more of those. They punted six straight times. Throw a screen pass to Chris Tyree and don't punt, for crying out loud. Defensive sacks for Notre Dame, 3.5.
P, go ahead.
I'll go under on that one. BYU's been pretty good at protecting Jaron Hall. I think they'll pressure him, but 3.5 sacks that's a big number.
He's hard to sack, man. He has such a great feel for the game and a great feel for where his release points are within the pocket, around the pocket. 3.5 is a little high. I don't think he'll allow himself to be sacked. Even if the O-line does lose the battle of Notre Dame's D-line, I don't think Jaron Hall will allow himself to be sacked 4 times. If he does, we're looking at a Notre Dame W.
Has he been sacked?
Yeah, he's been sacked like 5 times.
They've done.
I think a lot of times he's
only been hit
so
7
he's
times.
so resourceful that he's and he knows he has great escapability that sometimes he does get sacked just because he tries to go a little bit further than perhaps he should.
I agree with the pressures though, Pete. I do think they'll get to him. Chris Tyree yards from scrimmage, 97.5.
That's a lot.
It's really high, but now that I've said he's going to break one, I have to go over. I'll be a hypocrite. So over.
I'll take under, but I do think it's a good game for Chris Tyree to have a 68-yard run.
I would bet under on that one.
That's a bit. Yeah, that's a big.
Yeah, but I
number.
can't. So there's no.
Yeah.
Audric Estime, 75.5.
I'll go under that one as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. How's that?
It's your podcast.
I'm not. It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday.
It's
This is
early in
strange.
the
It's
week.
Wednesday.
For my over under, read Priester's preview on Friday.
Ask us this Friday night after a few beers. Over. How can they possibly stop him?
Yeah.
ND forced turnovers 1.5, and that is for the game, not the month.
I'll go over. Like going back and looking at the sort of regression or progression to the mean on turnovers, like there's just no way Notre Dame is not going to get some based on every other team in the last 10 years in college football.
Yeah, I mean, Jaron Hall's, I said this Monday, he's thrown 171 passes and has been picked off once. I wouldn't say he's going to throw 2 interceptions, but I'll take the over because he'll have 1 and they'll force a fumble or 2.
I'll just take under because I've watched them play a little bit. BYU penalty yards, 78.5.
They have been over that number in each of the last 2 weeks. If the refs call all the extracurricular stuff, then
I'll go over then.
Yeah, they have gone.
Yeah,
they have gone over that the last 2 weeks. By the way,
I'll go over. Why not?
What do you have to lose? Is that all of them, Tim?
That is it.
That is it. I'll go next to JJ Allwine. What bet would you put notice the bet? I had to include those. We had a bunch of questions.
We have to include bets.
What bet would you put your money on in Vegas? 1, Tommy Rees is at Notre Dame in 2024. 2, Marcus Freeman surpasses Brian Kelly's all-time wins record. 3, Notre Dame player wins the Heisman in the next 5 years. Or 4, 0-0 on the roulette wheel.
I will be betting 0-0 on the roulette wheel because I feel like I've been making a joke for like 3 weeks. So now I have to put my money where my mouth is on this one. So $20,
but
green 0-0 Friday
and
night.
So that's your opinion that one is more likely than the other 3. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
no,
Reese is most likely, but I hate to say it. Green 0-0 is the second most likely on those 4.
I agree with you.
Reese is most likely to be at Notre Dame in 24 or not at Notre Dame?
At Notre Dame.
Yeah, because Marcus Freeman has to win for 10 years. And Notre Dame has to win the Heisman in 5 years is by far the least likely. It didn't say Notre Dame will win a Heisman in my lifetime. It was in the next 5 years.
The next 5. Who's winning in the next 5 years? CJ Carr? It's not Tobias Merriweather because they won't play him.
They're costing him a Heisman.
Yeah.
You really think? I think
the worst by far. Those
no,
are
I think.
odds,
yeah, but I don't.
Well, let's look
I
at
don't
the
know
odds
that
on
Tommy
this.
Reese is.
What are the odds of Tommy Reese being at Notre Dame? 20%. That's still higher than green 0-0.
Oh, okay.
Not
yeah,
Friday,
that's true.
Not Friday.
Yeah, Friday. It's a lock. It's happening, especially when I bet it 12 times.
But okay, if you just said, forget the rest of the question. If someone just said, do you think Tommy Reese will be at Notre Dame in 2024?
No, it's less than 50%.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah, I don't think so either. All right. A couple of questions here from Blue Chip Man. I put them together. I'm going to separate them now. Blue Chip Man, speculate away on how Notre Dame's season plays out if Notre Dame wins Saturday, and then if Notre Dame loses Saturday.
Trying to think if it makes a difference other than the one game. I will say if they win they go 9-3, and if they lose, they go 7-5. So I will say an extra game. I'll add a game in there.
So what extra game does it influence?
It doesn't directly influence one, but it would show me where Notre Dame is.
Okay, well, fair enough. Yeah,
just be indicative of their team.
Yeah.
The quality of the team.
We're at week 5 after a bye, and you found your identity. You probably shouldn't lose it if I'm going to say 9-3 the rest of the way.
Yeah, after the bye, I hate to say it, like it puts more pressure on Notre Dame to win, but like they should win the game after a bye, like especially after playing how they played against North Carolina.
What was Kelly 12-1 after buys, right?
Yeah.
We remember the one.
We do remember
12-2. There was a
12-2.
USC game in there.
Oh, there sure was.
Oh God, how could you forget that one?
Yeah,
that was their Super Bowl.
Yeah, I wouldn't have remembered that had I not done a story on that on Monday. How will it impact Notre Dame? They'll be 4-2 and not 3-3.
You don't think if you'll change your view
if they win,
Dame,
they'll be. Pardon me.
You think
as far as
I'm
not a big fan.
No. What if they beat BYU decisively? So I'll give you 35-13.
I still think the Clemson game is really hard to win. I still think the USC game is really hard to win. I don't.
What if they lose 35?
I mean, I understand. I understand. Yeah. I mean, I understand how, certain aspects, how they play in certain aspects of this game will influence how you think about them moving forward. And also falling to 2-3 would really suck for this team. I mean, that would be shattering to them.
Yes, I think they will not go 8-4 if they go to 2-3. That's why I changed it to 7-5. I think they fall 2-3.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair enough.
That's a fair.
And then a question from Low Key Scott: if the Irish were able to beat BYU decisively, how would that change your outlook on the season?
It wouldn't.
The same
thing. I think that a loss will impact the outlook of the season more than a win would, even a decisive win. Because if they beat BYU 35-13 to use O'Malley's score, like that's not going to change how I view the Clemson game at all, nor will it change how I view the USC game. Unless they really wet the bed on Saturday, I have a hard time seeing them losing to Stanford or Syracuse or UNLV. Like they're not going to lose another game before Clemson, but if they smoke BYU, I'm not sure that makes them any more likely to beat Clemson because Clemson is really, really, really good.
You will change your viewpoint.
Getting better.
You'll change your viewpoint on Notre Dame's season in victories if the victory is Notre Dame 27, Clemson 14. That will change your viewpoint of Notre Dame. What Notre Dame's ability is.
Yeah, but at that point, they can only really lose one.
Why would you think they would lose to USC if they put one on Clemson? Like that. I think Clemson's. Pete, are you just saying Clemson's the next game where you'd be like, whoa?
Oh yes, yeah. It's like I think Clemson. If they beat Clemson, or even if they showed well against Clemson, if it was like a more aesthetically pleasing version of the Ohio State game. That would lead me to believe like, okay, they're more likely to beat USC now than they were when that game started.
I just want to go on record as saying that the trip to the Carrier Dome could get a little funny.
I think it'll be a tough game.
But again, I want to see what Syracuse does the next few weeks, and so that's why I hate predicting far in advance because I don't know what Syracuse is going to look for the next 3 weeks.
Well, I think both things are true. I think it's going to be a hairy game at Syracuse, and Pete's still right. He's not going to change his mind about the Syracuse.
No,
game
that's fair enough.
What happens to BYU?
All right, before we get to predictions, a lot of people want to know what gambling we would do when we're in Vegas.
I already said it.
0-0 for you. Okay.
Blackjack and the sports books. Sports books lose a little bit because I have DraftKings, but it'll still be more fun.
Yeah, I'm more inclined to bet on a game in Vegas, and then I don't know who's going to collect for me.
But that's why I said DraftKings kind of takes away.
No doubt. Yeah. But still, I want to.
There at 9 a.m. Bet a noon window game. You can collect it yourself.
I could do that. Well, wait. Is there a Thursday night? There are probably Thursday night games, right? I haven't looked at those. So we'll.
There will be time to collect your.
I'll play a little roulette too, just so I can put something on 0-0 for Pete, and also I usually will play a little 16 on the roulette wheel for Golden Joe.
Oh, there you go. Okay, 16. Okay, yeah, I got it. Joe Montana. Okay, all right. Predictions, fellas. Hit it. Day early than normal.
As it, I make it sound like a day early. I can't possibly make a prediction.
In the grand scheme of the pattern that we have to follow, it is early in the week.
It is early in the week.
But we had the bye week. We had the bye week. So
the bye week came at a good time.
Yes.
I think Notre Dame is playing well in a way that will travel to Las Vegas from Chapel Hill. I think BYU is obviously a lot better coached and a lot better team than North Carolina, but maybe not as talented at the wide receiver position with Josh Downs and Andre Green, or at quarterback with not Drake May, but to Jaron Hall. So, I think BYU will score. I just think that Notre Dame has figured out who they are offensively. So, Notre Dame 33, BYU 24. I think they'll play well. I think that they'll win. And what do you have there?
What did you just guess?
Yes.
What did you just guess?
You guessed what you
33-24.
That's all right. So
and only a fool would copy my prediction.
I'm not going to spoil that for Tim Priester, but I wrote down this right here. You guys can read that. 34-24. I agree with a lot of what you said there, Pete, that the offensive line can now travel. The defensive line will travel, and the defense is going to put together a game. I'm not saying BYU is not going to get a long drive touchdown, but I just think the defense is better than they've played still. They can get better too. The defense can get better too. And I think they'll answer the challenge of this game. 34-24. I'm right there with you guys.
34-24. I have a question for you before we wrap up. In the last 4 games, how many times has BYU gained more than 400 yards?
In the last 4 games, so you're including Baylor?
Baylor, Oregon, Utah State, and
yes, I am including Baylor. Baylor, Oregon, Wyoming, and Utah State. One time have they been over 400 yards, which I find very interesting.
Yeah, because they're averaging 445 yards.
Yeah, well, I just figured.
Yeah, well, they had 5. They had big games against South Florida and Wyoming. Wait, Wyoming? No, yeah,
they
Wyoming.
Did play Wyoming, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, they're fearless. I think they're going to play fearless, and that is my big concern. But we will have a prediction in the Friday Fighting Irish preview, and the next time that we talk with you folks, we will be out in Las Vegas. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure we will.
8:30 bed check, everybody.
In the morning?
This has been Irish Illustrated Insider.